Since his early films, Brando had challenged the established order, but by the 1960s, he was taking positions that were outright radical.
Marlon has been one of my inspirations for social justice. He was known for it. It's risky, and it cost him.
Brando has always been willing to fight for his beliefs. Even in the face of opposition, he has long demonstrated a generous heart.
Send your contribution to help Hungary.
And I think that comes out of this essentially compassionate nature, which is traceable into his childhood. There are all these stories, seeing a woman faint on the street and bringing her home and caring for her until she was better. I think it really comes out of something that's really true to him and his compassionate, suffering nature.
Continuing his commitment to the underdog that began with Jewish causes during his Stella Adler days, Brando became involved in the civil rights struggle early on.
It's on the move. Civil rights is a wave that's going to sweep the country.
After the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., Brando went where others wouldn't.
One of my dearest friends, a black man, John Crane, called me and he said, "Martin, stay indoors this night." There was a lot of tension about snipers. I turned on the television and Marlon Brando was walking through Harlem with Mayor Lindsay. That's pretty gutsy stuff.
Marlon does identify with people who are hurt, people who are maimed, people who are deprived. That's real. It's there.
Brando became a staunch supporter of Native American rights, and throughout the 70s, nearly all of his public appearances involved Indian activism.
We Americans have a solemn obligation to follow our treaty obligations. I hope you would receive my sentiments and my apologies.
Human rights simply do not exist for the American Indian.
Brando was an activist, not a passive supporter. He joined a group of American Indians in their armed struggle in Wisconsin in 1975. They occupied land they felt had been illegally seized from the local tribe. Eventually, the National Guard moved in, and the tense standoff escalated.
They asked me, "What about Mr. Brando?" And they looked at Brando, and he said, "You don't have to ask me." He said, "I'll stay." All of a sudden, the shooting began, and we all hit the floor. Brando, down there, he was shaking his head. He says, "I didn't know these guys would go this far, but I know now the struggle."
These people are prisoners of war, and I think that they should be accorded the same accords that we treat other prisoners of war.
Risky, real risky. If you're going to get involved in social justice in a public venue, it's costly. It's going to cost you something.
Brando's radical politics cost him favor in Hollywood, but so did his difficult reputation and spotty track record. By the early 1970s, he was a pariah.
He was nowhere. I mean, he had made 10 flops in a row. He had no money.
But Brando was wanted by a young director, Francis Ford Coppola, who was beginning work on his new film, The Godfather. Incredibly, Paramount insisted on a screen test.
To do a screen test of Marlon Brando? I mean, Streetcar Named Desire, On the Waterfront, it's crazy, it's humiliating. But Marlon was desperate to get back up on the marquee.
Coppola went to Brando's house with a video camera and watched the 46-year-old Brando stick cotton balls in his cheeks and magically transform himself into 67-year-old Godfather Don Corleone.
And they took the test back to the guys at Paramount, and they looked at it and they said, "Who is this?" They didn't know it was Brando. And they gave me okay.
Even after this unusual step, the studio was taking no chances.
But Brando's deal was very complicated. If he screwed up, he would not be paid any money, and he would be responsible for all monies laid out by the studio. I mean, it was a bizarre arrangement. They were basically putting a gun to his head and saying, "You're not going to do a Mutiny on the Bounty with us. You're not going to do another One-Eyed Jacks on us. You're going to be a good boy."
Brando was on his best behavior, and once shooting began, his fellow actors were full of respect.
It was an easy process to kind of relate to him as the Godfather because there was a parallel in life that was very obvious and very specific.
Aware of Brando's difficult reputation, Robert Duvall looked for ways to lighten the mood on the set.
There was a scene out there in that compound where they had the wedding. Well, he grabbed his pants and I grabbed mine. We mooned like 100 extras, and Coppola tried to stop it. And I don't know if you can put this on TV. Some woman said, "You look great, Mr. Duvall," but she said to her friend, "But did you catch the balls on that Brando?" She said, like, we laughed so hard.
The zany antics fit alongside Brando's unconventional process. He would use cue cards, sometimes even plastered to extras' foreheads, claiming that it kept him spontaneous and in the moment.
He emphasizes, either consciously or unconsciously, a certain irreverent process to his work. That's why he can look up and take his line off a tree. They had a billboard up there with these lines painted. You know, he can go, oh, you know, he can go up and take it, you know. What he did is exactly what we're doing now. You talk, I listen, you talk. And from that, if you're relaxed and open and talented, then you're going to fill up and be vulnerable. You're going to have anger, whatever it's going to take the scene takes.
If you'd come to me in friendship, then the scum that ruined your daughter would be suffering this very day. And if by chance an honest man like yourself should make enemies, then he would become my enemies. And then they would fear you.
Be my friend? Godfather?
The Godfather was an artistic and commercial hit, grossing over $100 million in its first year and winning Brando the Academy Award. His career was revitalized, but as always, Brando created controversy. On the evening of the Academy Awards ceremony, Native American activists were 1 month into their armed showdown with the United States government at Wounded Knee, South Dakota.
Firing is going on, and here we're watching the Academy Awards. And then they said, the winner is Marlon Brando for Godfather. Here comes this Indian girl, Sashi and Lowfeather. And she said she wants to make a statement. And it's Brando declining to accept the Oscar because of the treatment of American Indians at Wounded Knee.
I came here tonight as an official representative for Marlon Brando. And what Marlon Brando has in his heart is that the image of Native Americans in this country of the United States should be changed.
Wow, the whole place just exploded, and guys were out there firing their rifles on.
Many in Hollywood were troubled by the way that Brando brought his politics to the Oscars.
That was a stupid thing to do. Either don't come at all or turn up and say thank you very much and get off the stage.
It's kind of his choice, kind of a self-indulgent thing, you know. If you get an Oscar, go get it.
Brando's controversial and unpredictable actions off-screen were mirrored by an increasingly irregular working style on set. After starring in Bernardo Bertolucci's X-rated 1972 film Last Tango in Paris and improvising his way through the Missouri breaks, Brando would get a chance to find something deep within himself when he reteamed with Francis Ford Coppola in the 1979 film about the Vietnam War, Apocalypse Now. Brando played the part of Kurtz, a top-notch U.S. Army officer who, when confronted by the depravity of war, goes insane and creates his own colony of death deep in the jungles of Vietnam.
That was a whole journey, a bizarre set of events.
He arrived extremely overweight, much more so than our agreement with him. And after a few days, what I finally did is, by dressing him in black and photographing only his face, deal with the weight by that illusion.
We used to do Brando imitations. And I remember the final dress rehearsal, he watched me to see how I was going to do it, and I said, I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
It smells like, and I went, victory, like Brando, and he laughed. Oh, how could you do that?
Brando was hired for 5 weeks for more than $1 million. He often disagreed with Coppola's vision for the film and was not happy with the ending.
He was trying to tell Francis that he wasn't comfortable with this scene and the way it was written was not pleasing to him. And as he was speaking, he was folding the script. And by the time he got finished explaining why he wasn't comfortable with this scene, he had made a hat out of the pages, and he put it on his head to keep the sun off.
Without a scripted end, Coppola let Brando and Sheen improvise.
You could see a process in him as he worked. It was very exciting in a lot of ways, and it was very unpredictable, you know, and he didn't always know where he was going. And that's what made it a very exciting journey to go with him.
Are you an assassin? I'm a soldier.
an errand boy sent by grocery clerks to collect a bill.
Brando's unconventional techniques on Apocalypse helped make it a success, but there have been few signs of his genius since. In the 1980s, he tried to stay out of the public eye, but tragedy would be just around the corner. And when we return...
God bless him, you know, he's had a lot of sufferings lately.